Okay, so shalom everyone. Good to meet you again. Sorry for missing the opportunity last week. I'm traveling again today. I'm in New York for the conference of all the Chabad rabbis from the shluchim from all around the world. And בהשגחה פרטית, the class, the lesson we're going to learn today is directly connected with the gathering over here. So it's going to be a little bit, the topic is going to be in the beginning a little bit different, but at the end, you're going to see the connection. So what we're going to discuss today is the birthday of the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber. And the 20th of Cheshvan was his birthday. And why was he a special? I mean, every Jewish leader, especially Chabad leader, is very special and very important. But the importance of the Rebbe Rashab is that the Rebbe Rashab started the Chabad yeshivot, the Chabad colleges, which is called Yeshivat Tomchei Tmimim. In the beginning, so Chabad for generations that people would learn together with everyone else, but Rebbe Rashab started the Chabad curriculum, basically, so to say. And when it started, nobody understood the significance of it. Later, after his lifetime, during his lifetime it's already started the revolution in the different revolutions in USSR, but after the Rebbe Rashab passed away and communism took over, so the students of these yeshivot, they were the ones that they took charge and they went to fight the battle to keep Judaism alive in USSR. Many years later, starting from when the previous Rebbe came to America, he started sending out the different shluchim, the different emissaries to different parts of the world. And the people who are actually going to faraway places, not just physically far away, but spiritually far away places, they are all students of this yeshiva. So it's makes sense to say that the beginning of this yeshiva and the curriculum of this yeshiva and the way of education of this yeshiva and the students who went through this yeshiva, they take a big chunk, a big part in the shaping Jewish life the way we know Jewish life in 2025. So we want to go into a couple of stories of the life of the Rebbe Rashab to understand how does one comes to create such a unique educational way that there's so many people who are following it and following it to the extent not always, even when it's not too much fun, or even when at times you need to sacrifice literally. There were people who gave up their life literally, knowingly, okay, and unknowingly. But more importantly, how does one creates a generation of kids, of youngsters, who they see a cause which is not just a candy or a nice house, and they are willing to fight over and to live their life for that cause, despite all the benefit, the physical benefit that they will be missing. And what we need to learn from this is we need to try and adapt some of this to the way we educate our children. More importantly, the way we educate our children is dependent on the way we are educating ourselves, because we can try and preach to our children from today till tomorrow, but at the end of the day, the children will copy what they see. Okay, so the textbook can say A to Z, and it's going to be very nice. color coded and this and that, At the end of the day, what the children see is, in the most cases, what they will copy. So we have an opportunity now for the next few minutes. We have an opportunity to learn a very unique way of education and a very unique way to educate ourselves, as I said, and to become better people and to save Jewish life, to reshape Jewish life for the better of humanity and for the better of the Jews. So let me share the screen, the slideshow. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, and I need to go here, right? Okay. Let me start. Okay, so as we said, the Rebbe Rashab was the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe. In one of these years, the Rebbe Rashab had a problem in his hand, and the doctors couldn't help them. So the Rebbe Rashab went to travel to see different doctors, and he came to Vienna, to Austria. And in Austria, he met the famous Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was a psychiatrist who started a new way of understanding psychiatry. And obviously, Sigmund Freud was Jewish. And in his attempts, in the Rebbe Rashab's attempts to recover from the problem he has in his hands, after he consulted many doctors and no one could help him, so he met Sigmund Freud. Now, that meeting with Sigmund Freud, we have a little bit of a recording of what has happened at that meeting because of the Rebbe Rashab's son, his only son, the previous Rebbe, who then wrote in his diary the following. Benji, please, let's see what the Rebbe Rashab discussed with Sigmund Freud.
As children, in the presence of the Semak Tzedek, the Rebbe Rashab and his brother Rabbi Zalmon Aaron.
One second. Let me share again, because I think that... Oh, stop sharing. It went to a different slide. Let me see. One second. Let me know what slide you're seeing now. Okay, meeting with Freud, you see? Source number 1?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the beginning. The one before was not the beginning. Yes, let's see.
Meeting with Freud. Professor Freud asks the Rebbe, what is Chassidut? The goal of Chassidut is for the mind to instruct the heart on what it ought to desire and for the heart to apply what the mind understands, answered the Rebbe. How is this accomplished? Asked Freud. The mind and heart are two very separate entities.
Yeah, and as we know, mind and heart are two separate entities. Not only they are separate entities, each one has different desires, and most of the time, they are not seeing the world in the same way, right? When I reach the chocolate in front of me, so my heart and my mind, each one takes me to a different direction. My heart will desire the chocolate very much, and my mind will say to me that it's not healthy for you. So how can one bridge the separate path between the heart and the mind? So let's see what the Rebbe Rashab told them. One second. How do I go from here? Okay. Yes. So the Rebbe replied.
The task of Chassidut is to bridge these two worlds, or at least connect them with electric and phone cables, so the light of mind may reach the heart. The Rebbe added, after close scrutiny, I can say that Chassidim have a natural talent for this work.
Yeah. So what do we see is basically, in a nutshell, this couple of lines we've just read through is the essence of all the work of Chassidut. The essence of work of Chassidut is to bridge the gap between the heart, our desires, and our mind. What is our intellect powers telling us to do? Now, as we know, this is not an easy task. And some would say that it's not even possible to bridge, right? You see all the world with all the obesities and people with sugar problems and weight problem and addictions, different addictions. And if it was easy, if it was possible to connect those two worlds, you wouldn't have this problem. But then, nevertheless, the Rebbe Rashab saying this is the work of Chassidut. The work of Chassidut is to enable our mind to have an influence on ourselves to the extent that what our minds want will become our desires. Okay, my mind want to have healthy life. Okay, so it will become my desire. When I see this chocolate, I don't have a desire to this chocolate because I know that this chocolate is not healthy for me. Now, it's not easy, but the Rebbe Rashab and the previous Rebbe added that Hasidim, through the study of Hasidus, we have the talent to do this. So if you want to know, like I want, how can I control myself? Not only control myself to force my desires and to extinguish my desires and to follow what my mind wants. This is just the beginning of the work. The completion of the work is that my desires will come, my heart becomes what my mind wants to do. There is a bridge between them. There is a telephone, there is electric and phone cable between them, that what my mind wants becomes my heart desires. So how to get there? Let's hear a couple of stories that happened with the Rebbe Rashab as a child, as a very young child, that will enable us to understand what is the beginning of the way to get to this level where my heart follows my mind. Okay, let's see. The Rebbe and a Chassid game as children. Yes, Chenji.
As children, in the presence of Semak Tzedek, the Rebbe Rashab and his brother, Rabbi Zalman Aaron, Raza, would play Rebbe and Chassid. As Raza was older than the Rebbe Rashab by a year and a half, he would sit in the chair as Rebbe, and the Rebbe Rashab would act as a Chassid, preparing for an audience with the Rebbe.
Yeah, so there is a private meeting that happens between the Rebbe and the Chassid. So the two children of the previous Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, they would sit to play that game. Okay, our kids play different games, but the Rebbe's children, they play that game. So the Raza, the elder brother, is sitting on the chair as the Rebbe, and his younger brother, the Rebbe, who then later becomes the actual Rebbe, he comes over to consult with the Rebbe. Yes.
Mimicking the questions Chassidim would ask, which were of both personal and philosophical nature, the Rebbe Rashab asked Raza, "What is a Jew?" After furrowing his brow and thinking, Raza answered that a Jew is fire. "If so," asked the Rebbe Rashab, "why am I not burned when I touch you?" Raza replied, "Because you are also fire, and when fire touches fire, it is not burned."
Right. So the beginning of everything is to understand who we are. What is the component? What is the DNA that makes us? And the DNA that makes us, the main component of a Jew is our spiritual soul, our godliness soul. And God is fire. Now you ask yourself, how, if I'm fire, why when I'm touching another Jew? If another Jew is a fire, why am I touching another Jew? I'm not getting burned? Because you are also fire. And that is the beginning when before we begin any fight, okay? Before we begin any conflict with our evil inclination or with the world or with anything else, we need to know what are we made of. And we are made of fire. And as creatures who are made of fire, we can do whatever we are tasked. Because fire is a very, very powerful substance that can win all the wars. So that's the beginning. But then later there is another story with the Rebbe Rashab and his elder brother. Very interesting story.
My father, the Rebbe, once told a story of his father, the Rebbe Rashab, which happened during the lifetime of the Semak Tzedek. When the Rebbe Rashab was a child of 5 years old, he was playing with his older brother, Rabbi Zalman Aaron. Since both of them were raised in a home where discussion of the Rebbe Chassid relationship was very common, they decided to play a game of Rebbe and Chassid. The older brother, Rabbi Zalman Aaron, played the role of Rebbe, and the Rashab assumed that of the Chassid.
Okay, so?
Raza sat down on a chair and put on a hat like that of a Rebbe. The Rashab, playing the part of a Chassid, entered the Rebbe's room and requested a tikkun, rectification, for a particular shortcoming of his. This past Shabbos, he said, I ate nuts. And only after I finished them did I remember that the Alter Rebbe writes in his Siddur that it is preferable to refrain from eating nuts that require shelling on Shabbat. Raza answered immediately with advice, begin praying from a Siddur, not by heart. This is your tikkun, rectification.
Yeah, so what happened, he ate nuts. Now, in order to eat nuts, you have to shell them. Now, shelling them can be a problem on Shabbat because of the issue of borer, okay, where you need to throw the garbage and to choose. Well, it could be of a problem. The Alter Rebbe writes in his Siddur that it's advisable not to eat nuts on Shabbat because of that particular problem. And he, as a young child, he came to his brother saying, I did not know, and last week I ate, so what is my rectification? Rectification. So he said, your rectification is immediately start praying from the book, okay, and not from your heart. This is a little bit of challenge because many of us know many big parts of the prayer by heart because we do it over and over and over. So you pray from your heart, by heart, and that the problem is that you lose concentration because when you do something by heart, your mind can go in different directions. So he told them, you read from the Siddur, you pray from the text and not from your heart, and that's going to be your rectification. But the Rebbe Rashab didn't like the answer. Why?
The Rashab responded, your advice will not help and you're not a true Rebbe. The Raza asks, why? I gave you good advice. The Rashab answered, a Rebbe first lets out a sigh of commiseration, and only then does he give advice. You didn't show me any compassion, and therefore you are not a Rebbe, and your advice is useless.
That's a key story of understanding what's the relationship between a Rebbe and a Chassid, a Rebbe and his follower. A Rebbe is not just a guru where or a doctor where you come for advice. Okay, I have that problem and he will give me that issue, that response. It's not ChatGPT where ChatGPT can answer your questions. A Rebbe is someone who feels you. You are part of him and he's part of you. And when you are in pain, he feels your pain. Then after he feels your pain, because he feels your pain, because you are part of him, he can give you a solution. But since the elder brother, the Razor, did not krecht, he didn't show any compassion, just the textbook. Okay, what is the problem? This is the answer. This is not a Rebbe. And therefore, because he is not a Rebbe, your advice will not be helpful. This is very, very important, you know, but when someone comes to ask you a question, he needs help of yours, you want to consult with you, don't just tell him an answer to his question, but feel him. Feel what is the problem, feel his hardship. And only after you feel his hardship, you feel the problem, then try to relate to what he feels and then give him the answer. If you have, sometimes he doesn't need any answer. He only needs someone to listen to him. So after we had these two stories of the Rebbe Rashab, from a very young age, you see what was the behavior of the Rebbe Rashab. We'll have now two more stories that are now related directly into education. And as we said, then many years later, the Rebbe Rashab started the yeshivot, the Chabad schools. Then later grew up the people who went against all odds and fought with the communists and fought with the different dictators all around the world and spreading Judaism all across the globe. I think we have close to 7,000 couples. I saw the numbers yesterday. There's close to 6,500 couples all around the world fighting the battle to make Judaism accessible to every Jewish person wherever he might be. And if you count their children, so I believe there is probably around more than 100,000 people that are part of this war. And we need many, many more, because there's many, many Jews around the world, and the world in large needs healing. The world in large needs light. So if we want to be part, and I'm sure everyone here wants to be part of it, listen to the advice, listen to those following stories, and implement them in your own life and to your own children. Okay, let's see the story. So last week Torah portion we had 3 days after Avraham Avinu, our father Avraham circumcised himself after God commanded him. He has a guest. Who is the guest? Let's see.
God appeared to him, Abraham, in the plains of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance of the tent in the heat of the day.
So our sage is telling us that this was the third day for Avraham Avinu's circumcision. And the third day is always the most painful one. So, as after he sits at the third day, who comes to visit him? God himself comes to visit him. Now, the Rebbe Rashab, when he was a child, he learned this Torah. And when he learned this, he went to his father, to his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, to ask him a question. Let's see the story.
Concerning the 20th of March Cheshvan, the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Rayetz related an incident with the Rebbe Rashab that took place when he was a child of 4 or 5 years old, on the Shabbat when the Torah portion of Vayera was read. The Rebbe Rashab came to his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, to receive a blessing for his birthday, and he burst into tears saying, "Why did God appear to Abraham, our forefather, and not to us, to me?"
Yeah, that's a valid question, right? Avraham Avinu did circumcision. I also did circumcision, right? Every Jewish boy is doing circumcision. So why Hashem, God, revealed himself to Avraham Avinu and not to me? I also want to see God. I also want to have a private audience and a meeting with God. So his grandfather told him, yes.
The Tzemach Tzedek answered him, "When a righteous Jew at the age of 99 decides that he must circumcise himself, he is deserving that God should appear to him."
Wow. So the Tzemach Tzedek says there is a very big difference between you and Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, where he decided to do the Brit Milah, when he was instructed, not just decided, when he was instructed to do the Brit Milah, he was 99 years old. And when a person at that age, with this difficulty, decides to circumcise himself, then he deserves to have a meeting with God. Okay, so we will focus now on the question of the child, not so much on the answer of the Tzemach Tzedek. Okay, so let's see what the Rebbe takes out from this story.
We have often discussed the lessons in divine service that can be learned from this story. All the stories of our rabbis that we know, and especially those that they themselves chose to publish, contain guidance for every individual. We will now consider another point in this story. The Rebbe Raya specified, when relating this story, that the Rebbe Rashab had been a child of 4 or 5 years old at the time. The words of a Jewish leader, especially those said in public and later printed at his instruction, are certainly deliberate and exact.
Okay, so what the Rebbe is doing over here, the Rebbe is saying, this story, it's not just a nice story. You know, sometimes you read on the internet or somebody send you on WhatsApp a story, which is a very inspiring one. But you might say, what is the connection between me to that story? Sometimes I read stories of people from previous generations and even people from this generation, and I'm saying to myself, that's a very inspiring story, but it's not related to me because I'm not that person. And I could never reach that level of whatever he achieved. But here, because that story is from our Rebbe, and because the Rebbe Rayatz in particular gives us the detail of the story, then when the Rebbe Rashab asked this question, it was either 4 or 5. And then he commanded and instructed to print it in public. So that means that this is a story we need to learn a lesson from. It's not just the story we hear about the Rebbe Rashab, but it's a story that is relevant to me and you. Okay, so what is the relevancy? Yeah.
Therefore, it must be that this detail is not only meant to show the greatness of the Rebbe Rasha, that even as a very young child he was pained that God did not reveal himself to him, to the point that he wept about it. Rather, this detail too carries the lessons in divine service for all of us. It follows that although this story contains many lessons for all people, there is also a primary lesson meant even for those of the same age, a child of 4 or 5 in the literal sense.
Wow. So we need to learn a lesson for children who are either 4 or 5. And I want to add, and this is my take, not what the Rebbe says, that it's not only those who are young, 4 or 5 in age, but also for those who are young emotionally and those who are can still develop. Okay, which means that this story is relevant to everyone. Okay, so what is the relevancy? What do we need to learn from this?
The lesson is that it is possible to educate even a small child to demand, with sincerity and even tears, that God should reveal himself to him just as he revealed himself to Abraham.
Wow. So we need to get to, we can get to a level where our children and ourselves too, what will be our desire and our children's desire, even from a very young age, will be connecting with God. The connection with God will be more important to ourselves and to our children than to have another candy, than to play half an hour PUBG. Okay? And how do we know that it's possible? Because the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, printed that story with the Rebbe Rashab. And that means that yes, it's a very high level, but is achievable. It's possible to every one of us and our children from the age of 4 or 5 to get to this level of relationship with Hashem, of relationship with spirituality, of clarity from a very young age of what is important in life. What will I cry for and what will I not cry for? And now let's see for Maimonides, okay, in his interpretation of the Mishnah, he gives a very, very interesting way of educating children. Let's see.
What does a child want? Consider a small child brought to a teacher to study Torah. Due to their young age and limited intellectual capacity, they do not understand the value of Torah study. Therefore, the teacher who does understand this must motivate the child with things they like, saying, "Study, and I'll give you nuts or dates or some honey." Like this, the child will study and apply themselves, not for the value of what they are studying, because they do not understand its value, but for the reward.
Yeah, if you want some honey, so then study. And then through the honey, you will study. So the study itself, you don't understand the value of it because you're too young. But the honey or the dates or the whatever you'll get, whatever candy or whatever prize you'll get, you understand. But then later, yeah.
The treats are worth more to them than the studying. The study is perceived as difficult and intensive, but worth it for the reward. When the student grows and their intellect matures, and that thing which was once precious to them becomes trivial in their eyes, and they start loving other things instead, they should be encouraged and have their desire aroused with that new beloved thing. The teacher will say, "Study, and I'll buy you fine shoes or beautiful clothes."
Yeah, it's growing, right? Now it's moving from dates and honey. It's going to, I don't know, I'll buy you a scooter or I'll buy you a smartphone. No, smartphone is not a good parable because this will distract them. But I'll get you something that you like more, okay? And then when they grow, yeah,
Thus, the student studies, not for the sake of study itself, but for the sake of those garments which in their eyes are more precious than the Torah. For them, that is the ultimate purpose of learning. When their understanding develops further, and this too becomes insignificant in their eyes, they will direct their desire towards something greater. Then the teacher will say, study this section or this chapter, and I'll give you a coin or two. In this way, the student studies and strives to receive the money, which to them is more valuable than learning, as a goal of their study is to obtain the promised gold.
yeah, I want to be rich. Okay, so study. And the more you study, you will become richer. I'm going to give you money. So what does the student study for? The money. But he does the study for the money. But when it grows even more,
When the child's intellect grows even more, and this too becomes trivial to them, and they realize that such things are of little worth, they will yearn for something higher. The teacher will then say, study, so that you may become a leader or a judge, and people will honor you and rise before you like so and so. The student studies and exerts themselves in order to attain that position. Their purpose then becomes the honor that people give, the respect and praise. All of these things are improper.
improper, but you still do them. Because that's the right way to attract the young child or the young teenager or the young professional, to attract them to do what is right. But then later, ultimately, yes,
Concerning such learning, the sages said that it is not for its own sake, that is, one fulfills the commandments and studies Torah not for their own sake, but for some other goal. The sages warned against this, saying, do not make them a crown with which to magnify yourself, nor a spade with which to dig. They were alluding to what has been explained, that one's purpose in acquiring wisdom should not be to gain honor from others, nor to earn money, nor to make a livelihood from the Torah of God, but rather that the sole purpose of studying wisdom should be the knowledge itself.
okay. So this is the end of Maimonides. So the end of Maimonides says, start from a very young age to introduce your children to Torah, to study. By the way, it's true also for other things, not only for Torah. Try to introduce your children to study and buy other things. Give them candies, give them, I don't know, time to play, give them some other things that will attract them to the study. And eventually change those goals to more and more and more important things until the children, which are not children anymore, they can understand the importance of the study for the sake of study itself, for the Torah itself, of God's wisdom, for the connection with God itself. So what we see is that there is graduation, there is different stages at children education and understanding. But here, in the story that we had with the Rebbe Rashab, that the previous Rebbe said to print it, the previous Rebbe says that a child at a very young age, at the age of 4 or 5, he can have already a desire to have a connection with God, that if this desire does not fulfill, he can cry. The same way that my children cry when I take away their lollipops from them. Okay? So now the Rebbe will elaborate on this to explain us how is it possible to raise and educate our children from a very young age. So they will do things not only because I'm going to give you a candy, not only because you're going to become smart and you're going to have the best mark in school and you're going to become IIT Mumbai. No. I'm going to raise my children, and my children from a very young age, they could have in mind, in heart, what is important, and they will study They will do a mitzvah. They will study Torah, not for the candies that will follow. And by the way, the candies should follow. But they will do it for the purpose of a connection with God. Let's see it inside.
A child can also love God. Maimonides writes at length about how a young child should be taught. They need to be encouraged with things that appeal to them at that age. Study, and I'll give you nuts, and the like. Because due to their youth and the weakness of their understanding, they cannot yet grasp the value of true goodness. Here, however, we have spoken of expecting children to be moved and deeply affected, not by material reward and the like, but by the question of why God does not reveal himself to them.
Yeah. So each one, if we'll be honest, each one of us will be honest with himself, will say he will be doubted if it's possible for him to get his children to this level. And it might even be, if we will be honest with ourselves, we might even be doubt if we ourselves, we are at that level. Mature people, we are at that level. So how can we bridge this? So let's see what the Rebbe explains.
This means that children must be educated with the awareness that godliness is a part of their life, something they genuinely care about, to the point that they are pained that God does not reveal himself to them as he did to Abraham. If not for the incident that occurred with the Rebbe Rasha, we would not have been able to know whether such a feeling could exist in any Jewish child. Since by nature, children are drawn, as Maimonides notes, to physical pleasures, we will have assumed that they can only be motivated by material things that appeal to them.
Wow. So what's the difference now between the time of the Maimonides?
But once this incident took place with the Rebbe Rasha, and especially since the Rebbe Rayas publicly told the story and instructed that it be printed, it is clear that through this they revealed and paved a new path in education. From now on, with proper education, it was indeed possible to transcend the natural limits of children's inclinations and accustom them to desire spiritual things to the extent that they develop a profound longing that God should reveal himself to them.
Wow. So one asks himself, I don't understand. I still don't understand how a story that happened with the Rebbe Rashab when he was a child, and he was a special child, how is this relevant to me who live in Mumbai in 2025? How can I actually get to that level? I understand, I read the story of the Rebbe Rashab, but how can I relate this to my children? I can't even relate this to myself. So how can I get my child to be at that level? So the Rebbe will say a very interesting story that happened with the Bet Yosef. The Bet Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, he lived in Tzfat about close to 500 years ago, and he's very famous. Why is he very famous? Because he wrote the book, the famous book of Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish Code of Law, which we all follow, all the Jews in the world follow until today. And the story goes that one day he was studying a portion in the Talmud, and he got to a page where he could not understand the discussion. He could not follow and understand the discussion. And he tried very, very hard to understand the flow of the Talmud, the question and the answer, and he couldn't understand it. And it bothers them so much, and he cried so much, and he made a She'elat Chalom. She'elat Chalom is very righteous people could do it. They could ask God to teach them what they couldn't understand themselves. So the Bet Yosef did it. He asked God to teach him, to reveal to him what goes on in this Talmud page. And indeed, in the night, he had a dream. And in his dream, he was taught how to understand this piece of Talmud. And he got up in the morning, he was very, very excited. He opened the Talmud and he learned that. And now it all makes perfect sense. A couple of days later, he goes for the prayer. And he hears two very simple people, that they are studying the same portion of the Talmud that he had the question on. So he was kind of listening to how they're going to get stuck, the same way that he got stuck. But to his surprise, they are starting to learn this. And one of there were two people, one of them is asking the same question that he had. And his friend, to his surprise, tell him the explanation that he himself got in the dream from the angel. So he was he got lost. He said, I am a great Torah scholar. I'm trying to learn this for days and I couldn't, until I had no choice but asking God to reveal to me what it says in the Talmud. And these two simple people, they learned it like this, the same way. So he was in pain. He was in a lot of pain because something must be wrong. And the next day, he had again a dream. And in the dream, he was told that you should know that this portion of the Talmud, since the Talmud was written, this portion of the Talmud was not understood until you break your teeth over it, until the angel revealed and explained you how to understand this piece of Talmud. But now, after you brought this down to this world, now it became accessible to everyone. After you worked very, very hard and you found a way, you were gifted the way to understand it, now that gift is a gift that belongs to everyone. It's similar to, in physics, in science, after one is making a breakthrough and a revolution in science and in physics, now all the students from generations after, they will understand that that's going to be the beginning. The starting point will be the revolution that professor 100 years ago break his teeth for months and for years until he found a solution. So the Rebbe is saying that the same way, the Rebbe Rashab was a very special child. But after the Rebbe Rashab, he paved the way that children at the age of 4 or 5 can have a relationship with God. And when that relationship, the relationship with God that can take him to tears if they don't see God, that becomes now something that is common and is achievable to everyone. Let's see by the Rebbe's explanation.
And if we see a Jewish child who does not feel distress that God has not revealed himself to them, this is not because they are incapable of such a feeling, but because their teacher has not spoken to them from the heart.
So now the Rebbe will give that explanation. Yeah, opening the channels.
This can be understood in light of what is known about the concept of opening a channel. When someone first exerts great effort in a particular matter, he thereby opens a channel and draws that quality into the world. Once it exists within the world, it no longer requires the same degree of efforts for others to access it. This applies not only to matters of spiritual refinement or special abilities, but also to matters of understanding and comprehension. There's a well-known story about Rabbi Yosef Karo, author of the Beth Yosef.
Yeah.
He toiled intensely to understand a certain matter in the Torah, and after much effort, he finally grasped it. Later, he saw another Jew, someone far from his own stature, studying the same topic and immediately offering the same explanation that he had reached after tremendous exertion. This troubled him deeply until he was told, according to one version by the Arizal, that once he had already drawn this understanding into the world, it became accessible to others without the same struggle.
Okay, from this?
From this story, we learn that the concept of opening the channel applies not only to spiritual heights, but also to the realm of intellectual comprehension.
Okay, so now what we're gonna have from now on is 2 stories about the Rebbe Rashab, and that stories about the Rebbe Rashab will show us again how the Rebbe Rashab opened the channels, not only for the ability of having true relationship with God at a very young age, but also of understanding and caring for another person deep in your heart. Okay? And this is important, and this is how the shluchim and the students of the Rebbe Rashab and every one of us should behave and give up from ourselves for another. Let's see the story first with the tailor. Interesting story.
Our rabbis opened a new channel in the field of education with regard to children's relationship with God. They make it possible to educate Jewish children to yearn for spirituality, not for the sake of reward, but because such things become part of their lives, to the point that they weep over the fact that God does not reveal himself to them as he did to Abraham. In a similar vein, they also opened a new channel regarding interpersonal relationship. This too emerges from a story about the Rebbe Rashab during his childhood.
Okay, so the story with the tailor. Listen to this.
When he was 4 years old, a tailor once brought to his home a garment he had sewn for the Rebbe's mother. While the garment was being examined, the young child innocently pulled a piece of fabric out of the tailor's pocket. The tailor was embarrassed and began to explain that he had forgotten about a leftover piece. After the tailor left, the Rebbe's mother reproved her son, telling him that because of what he had done, the tailor had been shamed. When the boy heard this, he burst into bitter tears.
Yeah. So when you caught off guard, yeah, so the tailor himself was ashamed. And his mother told him, because of you, the tailor was ashamed. But what followed after? Yes, a few weeks later.
A few weeks later, he approached his father, the Rebbe Maharaj, and asked what one must do to atone for the sin of publicly shaming another person. His father asked why was he asking, but the child only replied that he wished to know without saying what happened. When his mother later asked him why he had not told his father the whole story, he answered, "Is it not enough that I have already sinned by embarrassing someone? Must I also transgress by speaking gossip and slander?"
And again, this is at a very young age. This is at the age of 4. Okay? So the Rebbe Rashab not only opened the channel and opened the gates for a child by the age of 4 or 5 to cry and to weep because God does not reveal to him, but he can get a feeling and a sense of relation to another Jew to the point that first of all he will cry if he embarrass him, but then later he will not even want to repeat it because this will embarrass him even further. And the Rebbe is going to analyze the story even more. Let's see.
On initial examination, this instance of shaming another person does not seem to have been a particularly serious offense. The account specifies that the Rebbe Rasha pulled out the piece of fabric innocently, meaning unintentionally, and moreover, it was not done in public. Only his mother was present. Nevertheless, as soon as he heard that the tailor had been embarrassed, it affected him deeply to the point of bitter weeping. This shows that his distress did not stem primarily from the fact that he himself had caused embarrassment and might therefore deserve punishment.
So, what was the reason for his cry? Yeah.
But from the very fact that a fellow Jew had suffered shame.
Because he has not done something very, very terrible. But whatever he has done caused somebody to be in shame, and another person to be in shame. And therefore,
For this reason, he also refused to tell his father what had happened, even though withholding the reason for his question might have seemed to border on disrespect towards his father. Moreover, even if he had told him, it would have been only for the purpose of correcting his misdeed. Yet, he could not bear to talk about something that drew attention to something negative about another Jew in any form whatsoever.
wow. Wow. With all the justification. And he will lose from it because his father could not even give him a correction. But just the thought that this can cause an embarrassment for another Jew, he didn't want to do it. And you ask yourself again, what is the relationship between this story about the Rebbe Rashab, who was a holy Jew, to me or to my children? Saying the Rebbe, since the story.
Since this story has been told to us with emphasis on the fact that the Rebbe Rasha was only 4 years old at the time, It serves as proof that it is indeed possible to educate every Jewish child, even at that young age, to feel and act in a similar way.
Wow. Wow. And I have children at this age, and I know how difficult is this. I think one of the takeouts is that we need to have a look at our children, that our children are capable of being at that level. Let's start there. Let's start in understanding that our children, they are so sensible, they are so they are able to understand this. And then if we understand, that being with my children is not only, to wait until they grow up, and then when they grow up, I can start play with them, I can start discussions with them. This needs to start at age 0. This way of teaching, this way of life need to start at the age of 0. And even children at a very young age, where the most important things in their life is, their stories and their lollipops and their smartphones, even they are capable of understanding, and not only understanding, but following it and behaving like this, and even crying for spirituality or crying for embarrassing another person. I think if we get there in our understanding of our children, in our respect to our children, that's going to be a nice beginning. But let's see what the Rebbe says. And the Rebbe demands from us much more than this. Yes.
The lesson from this is to educate our children to have such greater sensitivity for others to the point that even at the age of 4, they should already react with heartfelt emotion to the point of tears if they realize that they have caused someone embarrassment.
Wow.
As in the case of Rebbe Rasha, the moment he was told that what he had done amounted to shaming another person, there was no need for anyone to explain anything to him. He immediately burst into tears.
Wow, wow, wow. And continue, and in the same way.
In the same way, a child should be educated so that when he is told that his actions constitute shaming another person, he instinctively reacts with sincere tears.
Wow.
And even when the situation is like the one described here, where it did not occur publicly and concerned only a small piece of cloth whose ownership might even be debatable and was done unintentionally, the child should be raised with such sensitivity that the matter troubles him deeply enough to bring him to tears.
It's not so much of what the Rebbe Rashab did, but what was caused to the discomfort and the embarrassment that was caused to another person. Sometimes children, somebody is crying, okay? And Yokavi says, what happened? So the other child says, it wasn't me, I didn't do anything. So what the Rebbe is telling us is, it doesn't make a difference what you have done. Somebody was embarrassed because of your action, regardless, you didn't do anything wrong. This should cause you tears. This should bring you need to be sensitive to the other so much that his embarrassment and his discomfort should cause you an embarrassment and discomfort. Let's continue. How does one reaches this level of education of his children?
In order to be able to educate our child in this way, we must serve as a living example and conduct ourselves accordingly. One might argue, what difference does it make how the parents behave? Children should accept the truth regardless. Since this is a teaching of the Rebbe Rasha or of his successor, the Rebbe Rayatz, isn't that enough regardless of the parents' own conduct? The answer to this is that we clearly observe that parents' behavior has a direct influence on their children.
Yeah, sometimes you take a lot of efforts, you take a lot of money to send your children to the best schools and to the best university and to the best. And you're saying to yourself, I'm investing so much in my child. I did not have that opportunity. So what does it make a difference how I behave? I take so much efforts to send my child to a better education places. Saying the Rebbe, no. Your parents' behavior will have a direct influence of their children. Their children, your children, they will copy what they see by you. Not what they are taught in school, but what they see by you. And therefore,
if we wish to instill such sensitivity in our children, we must make sure that we ourselves live by it, that we are exceedingly careful not to shame another person, even in a small or private matter, just as in the story of the Rebbe Rashab. When the father behaves in this way, it makes an impression on the child. The same applies to the verse, "You shall teach them to your children," which the sages interpret as referring also to students. Teachers must also serve as a living example because the teacher's conduct shapes the children they educate.
yeah. So if a teacher is trying to educate a child the whole year, but then on the last day of the year, the teacher himself behaves not in a proper way, all of the efforts of this whole year, boom, gone. Why? Because what the children will learn, what the children will copy, is not what you say, but is what you do. Okay? And even
if the teacher is a great scholar and has their own reasoning for behaving in a certain way, they must remember that their students are unaware of these complex considerations. They see only the teacher's outward behavior, and the teacher must therefore conduct himself in a manner from which the students can emulate.
wow. So what we had today, let's see the key points and then the takeaway, and then we'll discuss it. Yeah.
At the age of 4, the Rebbe Rashab approached his grandfather in tears and asked why God revealed himself to Avram but not to him. The Rebbe explained that it was due to the merit of the circumcision that Avram performed at age 99, which earned him the revelation. This story conveys a powerful lesson. Every Jewish child can desire and yearn for a personal revelation from God. It is both possible and our responsibility to educate children to cultivate this yearning. This event opened the channel for generations, granting every child the ability to experience a true longing for divine revelation.
And now, a true longing for true Ahavat Israel, a love to another person. Yeah.
From another story about the Rebbe Rasha, we learn that this channel also applies to interpersonal matters. When the Rebbe felt deep sorrow that a tailor had been embarrassed and distressed, despite having committed no wrongdoing, it teaches that every Jewish child can be educated to live with awareness, responsibility, and sensitivity towards the dignity of others.
Wow. And if it's possible, then we must do it. It's not just an optional thing. But if we were given that option, it's something that, of course, we want our children to be like this. So we need to begin with ourselves, and then our children will be at that level. Let's see the takeaway.
We should not underestimate the value of children. Even at a very young age, children possess great spiritual potential and a genuine desire to engage in spiritual matters. They can express and fulfill this potential through giving charity or helping those in need, reciting blessings over food, and participating alongside their parents in Shabbat prayers at the synagogue, among other ways.
Yes. That was the class of today. And what we discussed was the way of education of the Rebbe Rashab and what we can learn from this. And as I said in the introduction to the class, I'm in New York today for the Kinos HaShluchim. And Kinos HaShluchim, what the Rebbe demands from us, his emissaries, his Shluchim, is to behave, to be like him, to care for another Jew. And that is, in short, the success of the Shluchim and the value that drives the Shluchim from all around the world to leave the comfort zone, to leave the square of Yerushalayim or Brooklyn, and to go to different places and to care for another Jew in those different places. And the goal is not that it's going to end over there, but every student of ours, everyone we get in touch with, we need to give him over that idea that he himself will become an ambassador of light in that way. And this way, Bezrat Hashem, we were going to create waves of spirituality, waves of light, that Bezrat Hashem will tip the scale and the whole world will turn into be a better place in the coming of Mashiach, where the desire of the whole humanity, not just Jewish children at the age of 4 or 5, but the whole humanity, their sole desire of all humanity will be to know God. And that begins today in your home. That begins today with your children. And as the Rebbe said, in order to influence your children, it needs to start by you. And when the children see what is important to us, this will then later become important to them. And that will become important to their children and for generations to come. I will stop the recording.